This week on Christian World News, the Nigerian girl who chose faith over freedom. Now the world is rallying to her cause. Plus, the world applauded when this Iraqi little girl forgave ISIS. Today, after years in a refugee camp, Mariam is home again. Hear what she has to say about the years of hardship. And millions take to the streets in Hong Kong. We'll tell you what's behind these massive protests and the role the church is playing. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas. My colleague Wendy Griffith is on assignment. A young Nigerian Christian girl has been declared a slave for life by Muslim militants. 16-year-old Leah Sharibu is held hostage by the Boko Haram terrorist group. Leah's mom traveled to Washington, D.C. this week on a mission to secure her freedom. John Jessup has her story.
Rebecca Sharibu has little to smile about, grieving a loss no parent should bear.
My name is Rebecca. I come here to plead the government of U.S. to please help me for her release.
Her daughter, Leah, was kidnapped at school along with 109 other girls, taken by Boko Haram, a deadly Nigerian terror group with ties to ISIS. The Nigerian government negotiated the release of each girl except for Leah. Her captors wouldn't let her go unless she renounced her Christian faith. At just 14, Leah refused.
She chose faith over freedom when it would have been so easy to cave.
For 6 months, Leah's mom had no idea whether she was dead or alive until August 2018, when Boko Haram released this photo and a recording of Leah pleading for her life.
So from February to August, you had no information?
No information.
What was it like when you saw the video with your daughter wearing the hijab and on the mat?
Immediately I saw it, I just started crying and weeping.
And it's not just Rebecca's. Tears flow throughout this West African nation. About 2,000 Nigerians died last year in a dispute portrayed by the media as a clash between farmers and herdsmen.
We're here to let the world know what's happening, because they keep this narrative of herder-farmer conflict. It's not that way at all.
Instead, Alhiri Mugaji and Mercy Mesamari call it a religious campaign to oppress Christians.
A bill was just passed by the National House of Assembly saying that preachers are going to be regulated and their license renewed every year. So we believe Kaduna State is a testing ground for what plans they have in Nigeria as a whole.
They're speaking out with great risk to their own lives because Fulani Muslims now run the country.
Someone has to say what is really happening. And if God says it's you, then you can't run away from the responsibility of being the one to talk.
This really is a jihad that is raging in Nigeria and that we are ramping up to a genocide.
Now 16, Leah's brave stand is encouraging others.
As a Christian, I'm not afraid. I want to stand for my faith on behalf of my people.
Even pushing her own mother, who's never once left her village, to travel thousands of miles to the United States, desperately seeking help.
Donald Trump,
I have come to plead with your government, to plead with President Donald Trump. My son's name is Donald. So, Donald Trump, it's a son. I need him to help me have my daughter released.
Pain and prayer fueling this mom's passion to be reunited with her daughter. John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, John. To learn more about Leah Sharibu's story and the efforts to free her, just go to our website, cbnnews.com. 4 years ago, we introduced you to a little girl from Iraq. Mariam touched people around the world when she said she forgave ISIS for chasing her family from their city. Today, she and her family, they are back in her home in town of Karakosh. The same Sat7 reporter who first told her the story caught up with Mariam to hear her testimony of God's faithfulness.
متونسين، بس يعني هنا ما متونسين، بس الحمد لله يعني الله سترنا، الله حبنا وما قبل يعني يقتلونا داعش.
انت حاسه بايه ناحيه الناس اللي ممكن تبقى خرجتك من البيت وتعبتك؟
ما راح اسويهم ولا شيء، بس يعني اقول لله يسامحهم.
She is a 10-year-old Iraqi refugee.
She has nothing against ISIS. She forgives them. But even if you do have hardships there, you still have hope and light. It's very important for people in America to hear this message.
Today, I learned that Miriam and her family returned safely to their original home in Karakosh. I came to visit them and to see how they are experiencing God's faithfulness by bringing them back to their homeland. This is one of Miriam's wishes that came true. 5 years ago, I met Miriam for the first time and interviewed her in a refugee camp. Today, I'm here in Karakosh, Miriam's hometown, asking about her feelings when she returned to her original home.
It's a very, very good thing because I back to my home. I see my home again. I'm living now in my home, so I can remember all the great memories I had before. Our house was protected by the hand of God. God is always with me.
How do you feel that God is always with you?
He always blessed my life. He always blessed me, and do you know, He always give me a hand when I am in my examinations, when I am at home, when I have trouble. He always helps me.
Miriam, we are now approaching the Easter day. God has opened a new door for you. How do you feel this, that you are celebrating nowadays while you are back at your home?
Look, it's not about the house. It's not about the place that you're living in. It's about what you feel in your heart. It's about what you see that God is doing for you. It's about that God is always protecting, and you can just count on Him.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Some Iraqi and Syrian Christians are still without their homes. We encourage our viewers to continue praying for those refugees. Coming up, protests rock the Beijing-backed government in Hong Kong. How Christians are leading the fight to protect their freedoms.
People want to know, is there a plan and how do you find it?
CBN presents The Plan. 8 keys for understanding God's will for your life.
We're going to talk about God's plan for your life.
Is there a plan for everyone's life?
In Pat Robertson's latest teaching, you'll discover the secret to knowing and living out God's unique purpose for you.
The plan of God will be unfolded in your life in ways you couldn't believe possible.
In The Plan, Pat reveals the principles to understanding God's will so that you will be filled with peace, provision, joy, and satisfaction. Plus, see amazing stories of how others are living out their individual purpose intended by God.
God is faithful, and we did what He told us to do.
Live the life God has designed for you.
I hope that God works out a plan in you that will bring blessing, joy, peace, and happiness.
Get the plan. Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit cbn.com.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Welcome back to Christian World News. World leaders are urging Washington and Tehran to step back from the brink of potential war. This after an increasing number of incidents in the Persian Gulf. Some fear the tensions could escalate into outright conflict. Joining me now for more insight on the Iranian regime is CBN's Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell. So Chris, war figures prominently in Shia Islam's teaching about the end times, right?
Exactly, George. You've reported on that. In fact, you've been to the very mosque there in Qom, not too far from Tehran, where supposedly the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, is in that well, ready to come out at the last time. And the preparations, the landscape has to be chaos in the world. So any sort of a war would really fit into the Shiite Islamic theology, this end of the war scenario, end of the world scenario, and it just might play in exactly what they're looking for.
Chris, if a war does indeed break out, what's the impact for Israel?
Well, it's huge, George. In fact, we were just up on the northern border several days ago. We saw a terror tunnel, 22 stories deep in the ground, 260 feet. They are planning, whether it's terror tunnels, whether it's more than 100,000 rockets to attack Israel. When that happens is yet to be determined. This is the kind of scenario that actually Iran could tell Hezbollah, okay, this is the time to attack Israel. We were there in 2006 when 4,000 rockets were fired into Israel. Now they have maybe 120,000. The IDF has told us that would really shut down Israel. They can go to almost any place in Israel. So any potential war between the U.S. and Iran could trigger a conflict on Israel's northern border with Hezbollah.
Chris, you know this very well. The Iranians are suffering immensely. I'm sure they don't want a conflict because it will only add to their ongoing misery, right?
Exactly. And you know, George, there are many Iranians who are displeased with the regime. I mean, I would say the majority of Iranians really don't like the regime, but they have a steadfast remnant that really sticks with them, the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, but it would increase the suffering for them. And who knows? I know a lot of people are praying for the fall of the regime. There's a great revival going on there. There's great persecution of the church, but it remains to be seen what actually happened, what will finally topple this regime. But people really need to know that behind the facade of this death to America, death to Israel, there's really Iranians who love Israel, love the West, and love the United States.
That's right. In the last few seconds that we have, Chris, how can we pray more effectively for the situation in Iran and the broader Middle East region?
Well, you know, Paul encouraged us to pray for leaders, pray for President Trump for great wisdom, what he needs to do or not do. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, really for the Lord to be exalted in this situation, regardless of what happens, and pray for the believers in Iran and throughout the Middle East that their faith would remain strong.
Okay, my man, Chris Mitchell in Jerusalem. Sir, always a pleasure to have you on our show. Thanks for coming on.
Same here, George.
Turning now to Asia, where Hong Kong's leader is backing down in the face of huge protests over her extradition agreement with China. As Dale Hurd reports, there is still concern mainland China is determined to steadily chip away at Hong Kong's freedoms. But the church is playing a big role in standing up to the dictators.
An extradition bill that would have sent criminal suspects to communist China for prosecution seems to be dead for now. But Hong Kong's student protest movement against the heavy-handed rule of Beijing has come back to life. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam has apologized for the extradition bill that set off the massive protests, but said she would not resign. This after millions turned out to protest what they believe to be an attempt by China to further erode their independence. As a British colony, Hong Kong had political, religious, and economic freedom, and it grew into one of the major financial powerhouses in the world. When the UK turned Hong Kong over to China in 1997, those freedoms were supposed to be protected, but residents see the extradition law as one of a series of attempts to take them away.
The extradition law will really is a threat to the judicial and legal independence of Hong Kong from mainland China.
The last British governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patten, said the West needs to stand up to Chinese attempts to demolish what he called the firewall between Hong Kong and mainland China.
We should make it clear that this is not a policy or a succession of policies which we're prepared to stand by and ignore.
Some have characterized the conflict between China and Hong Kong as a conflict between communism and Christianity. And an unofficial anthem of the protest was Sing Hallelujah to the Lord. A key protest leader who is a Christian, Joshua Wong, says China's extradition plan has blown up in its face, reigniting the protest movement against the dictatorial rule from China.
Beijing and Carrie Lam transform whole generation of youngsters from normal citizen to dissident. That's the price that Beijing must pay.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Hong Kong will be on the agenda when President Trump meets with Chinese President Xi at the G20 summit in 10 days.
The president's always been a vigorous defender of human rights. He's going to get the opportunity, I think, to see President Xi in just what will be a couple of weeks now in Osaka, Japan at the G20 summit. I'm sure this will be among the issues that they discuss.
Optimists will see in this protest victory the hope that Hong Kong residents can stand up to China. But pessimists have long predicted that democracy in Hong Kong would eventually die after the 1997 handover to China, and that it's only a matter of time. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Up next, he grew up in a middle-class family, but his friends struggled to survive in the slums of Brazil. Today, he's helping hundreds escape poverty and a life of crime.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. Whoa! It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
No Super Falls, man.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
How can you find God's plan for your life?
CBN presents The Plan, 8 Keys to Understanding God's Will for Your Life. In Pat Robertson's latest teaching, you'll discover the steps to take in following God's plan, how to know for certain when God is leading you, how to get rid of spiritual blindness and see God work.
God said, I've got a plan to give you a future and a hope.
Get The Plan. Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit cbn.com.
And welcome back to the broadcast. All around the world, Christian men and women are quietly at work, preaching the gospel and changing lives, sometimes in the most unexpected places. Recently, my co-host Wendy Griffith discovered a ministry that's working to bring light to one of the darkest places in South America. Take a look.
Brazil's beautiful beaches draw millions of tourists to its sandy shores every year. But there's a darker side to this South American nation, a poverty so severe that people become trapped for generations. Living in the slums or shanty towns, they find escape in drugs and alcohol and a life of crime. Take a look.
Fortaleza in the northeast state of Ceará is home to 2.5 million people. The beaches are a tropical paradise, but despite recent economic growth, there are still hundreds of thousands of people in the city living on less than $2 a day. In the overcrowded slums or favelas, having a home means that you have 4 poorly constructed walls on invaded land. These homes have no planning controls, no sewage systems, improvised plumbing, and often no road access. These are the physical conditions of the slums. The social conditions are even worse. Drug-related gang violence is unquestionably the biggest problem in the favelas of Fortaleza. The local papers report murders every day of the week. The majority of the victims are under 25. Even though most people in the slums just want to work and have a chance at a better life, they are forced to live under the control of these gangs. Daily life, which is already hard because of physical poverty, is made even worse by violence, which adds insecurity, fear, grief, and desperation. After an interrupted night of sleep in a room of 7 or 8 people, undernourished children have to literally dodge bullets to get to school, often only to find that the school is closed because teachers are on strike. This is where Channel to Brazil for Christ steps in.
So our work takes place here in the heart of the slum community, and primarily what we're trying to do is offer children a safe place to be during the daytime. The slums are incredibly dangerous places, and what happens is children who live and growing up in the slums, they see and hear everything that's going on. And so they come into the program and they're consumed with worry, with stories of the violence and the difficulties, domestic abuse, and problems in the home that they're experiencing. So really what we're trying to do is provide a place where they can come, they can feel safe and loved, and know that they're special and that they're cared for.
We'll talk about these kids that you've been doing this ministry now for 38 years to the children in the favelas. What are the risks to growing up in this much poverty?
Very high. The risks are very high. 30% of the children never graduate high school. 80% of the children never graduate high school, right. And they don't go into college. And besides that, there is 70,000 homicides a year. In Brazil, the ages of 14 to 21.
70,000?
70,000 homicides a year.
Wow.
Nobody's been talking about this, but it's right in our neighborhoods. Teenagers fighting for drug territory, for revenge, and so on. So it's not uncommon that we see in our community 2 or 3 murders a week.
Mark, how is your ministry helping kids escape this darkness?
Primarily, we have to change the children's heart from cynicism to hope. So once they believe they can have hope, they can fight for themselves.
Wow.
And I believe Jesus Christ is the answer to all of that.
How do you bring Jesus into the slums in order for these kids to even know about him?
Well, Jesus said that talks about love not only with words, but words and deeds. So we get an educational program. The kids come to the program every day. 260 children daily hears the gospel of Jesus Christ through devotion. They have chapels every Friday. And all the staff are Christian people. And we have 20 staff members, all Christians, from the caretaker to the director. And so they have the influence of receiving the good news of Jesus Christ through not only through the word, but also through their conviction, their lifestyle, and their behavior.
Now, some of these slum kids have graduated college and have come back to help in this ministry, right?
Yeah, that's right. We have taken children from no hope, no dreams, thinking about what I'm going to need today, to create hope and expectation, and take them from first grade all the way through high school, from high school to college. They're the first ones in the community to graduate from college.
Well, can you give us an example? I'm sure there's somebody comes to mind who's gone through this transformation, one of your
I'm talking about Lucilene and Adalberto. Adalberto, out of his 10 friends, grew up in a slum community. 8 are dead, 1 is in prison, and him. 10 friends he grew up with. Lucilene, they escaped from marriage. Lucilene, her in a fight, in a drug fight, her brother killed her dad. And he went to prison. Right. So that kind of lifestyle, that young girl got hope in Jesus Christ, was coached. We expected her to do something for her life. We give an educational program. We gave a college program. Today, she is the head of a large company, of HR companies, 2,000 employees.
Amazing.
And doing a training program on drug addiction on the factory.
Mark, how can our viewers help these kids in the Brazil slums? What can we do?
They can check on the website and the channel.org. There is a website there. They can call a number and they can become dream builders. It's a program that you have. Once you give $30 a month, we send you a child story. So that would be a connection. And the children can receive that, the donor can receive that child story. Then there is a follow-up with newsletters. And if it is a church, a package with a church, we invite them to come as a missions group.
Well, it's amazing. You've been doing this now for almost 4 decades. And even though you didn't grow up in the slums, God gave you a heart for those, for your friends. In the generations that followed. We're so thankful that you were able to stop by today. God bless you and your ministry.
Thank you very much.
To learn more about Mark's ministry and how to take part, just go to our Christian World News website at the address on your screen. We'll be back right after this.
As the world watches from the outside,
it's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb